Hello. Today we're going to have a look at using additives in your melt and pour soap base. So there's many different soap bases you can get in melt and pour, and you can purchase them pre-made or you can make them yourself. Some of them will come with the little sachets. Renaissance sell a whole range of soap bases with the sachets, so if you want just a kilo of goat's milk or just a kilo of Shea butter soap base, you can purchase it like that. Or you can purchase your plain melt and pour soap base and add your items in yourself. So there's lots and lots of different things you can use, but we're going to look at 3 or 4 main categories today. The first category that we'll be looking at is botanicals, dried flower petals and things that you might find in the garden or you might purchase. The ones that Renaissance use are all Australian grown and organic. Then we might look at some milk additives. So we've got a milk bath powder and a goat's milk powder to play with today. Then we have some clays. The Renaissance clays are all Australian clays, and today I've got green clay, pink clay and white clay. We'll talk about the differences between those in a few minutes. And then we've got some butters. So I have a shea butter and a coconut oil butter, and we've got some rock salt. So let's make them up, and then once we've made them up and we're waiting for our soaps to set, perhaps we can have a chat about the different reasons that you might put different additives in. So the first one I've decided to use, I wanted to make kind of a more masculine soap. I guess we have a lot of really pretty flower shapes and pretty floral fragrances, so I wanted to make one, well, the men could use it, and I guess you've got interspersed. Now there's the dried lavender buds, and we'll talk a bit more about your botanicals later, but I've also taken some poppy seeds out of the pantry. So for the men I'd probably go more the poppy seeds, but I kind of like to use the lavender today, so that's what I'm going to stick with. I've decided for that soap I'd like to use the leaf mould. It's a fairly simple mould, and I'd like to use some of the clear melt and pour. So I'm going to take a silicone cup, take a little bit of the melt and pour soap base. I probably need about 2 blocks should do it of the clear melt and pour soap base. Now I want to add just a hint of green colour to that, the pigment, Renaissance pigment dye. I don't want it very green, I just want to use 1 drop, so it just gives me a hint. Okay, 2 drops. Just a hint of the green. Hopefully that will still come out really, really gentle because these pigment dyes are pretty concentrated. And I'm going to add, I might add that once it's melted, a little bit of the lavender powder. And for my fragrance, I think I'll use a pure essential oil of lemon. So I'll mix them. You can add your fragrances and colours after your soap has melted if you like, but I'm just going to add it in beforehand, make it all pretty easy, and then I'll smell it when it comes out and see if it's enough, and if not, I'll add just a wee bit more in. So I'll put that in the microwave in the little cup on high for 20 seconds, and then I think I'll tip the botanicals in there once that's come out. Let's take that out of the microwave, and I'll make it in the front so that you can see what I'm doing. I'll move a couple of these moulds which we're going to use for some of the other additives out of the way. Okay, take a little stirring stick. So this is just the clear soap with just a drop or 2 of the green dye in it, and I use some pure essential oil of lemon. Now, to tell whether it's the right colour, just have a look. It's a really gentle green, which is what I'm after, and I'm just going to smell it. Now, with your oils, when you've put them into hot soap, if you sniff really closely, you can burn your nose with the fragrance if they're being evaporated. So always just sniff gently. Yeah, I think I'd like a little bit more fragrance in this one. Okay, the lemon oil fragrance, mix that up. Now remember, we are putting additives because at this point this is just a plain soap, but I want to make sure that in the mould I don't put in my botanicals straight away because I'll get airlocks in it. So I'll just pour a tiny little bit of the green in there first, just enough, swirl it around so that, oops, pour it on the table, so that the base of that is covered. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the dried lavender buds. Now so that I don't get the entire container suddenly tipped in, I'll put a few in the lid, scatter a few through the mould. We don't want too many because they'll clog up your drains and they'll be difficult when you're showering. And then just pour over the tops of those with your soap. Now they've floated, so your botanicals are going to float. I don't really mind. Just push some of them down if you want to. I quite like them on the back a little bit, but if you didn't want them to float, if you wanted them in your soap, just pour a thin layer of your soap and then let it set, because that way they'll be trapped at that level, and then pour another layer again. I have a few bubbles in here, so I'll just give it a spritz with some isopropyl alcohol. That breaks all the bubbles, and then my lavender is just floating down. Actually, you know what? Let's use the poppy seeds as well. So let's just take a tiny scattering of a few poppy seeds, not too many, and pop them in there. Now they're all floating on the surface at the moment too. So let's give them a little mix through, and the poppy seeds will sink to the bottom, whereas your lavender tends to float on the top. So it'll give a really interesting effect. Now, my catchphrase with my students when they're making soap is, if you make a mess, don't clean it up. Just leave it sit there. So I've spilled a little bit of that green soap on the bench. Don't clean it up, just leave it sit there. I'll move that cup out of the way and we'll clean that up once it's set. It'll just peel straight off. So this is our first range, is botanicals. Now what I've got in these containers, I've got the poppy seeds, which we talked about. I've got the dried lavender flowers, some dried rose petals, rose buds, chamomile, and my favourite, hibiscus flowers, dried hibiscus flowers. I often brew these up and have them with honey as the most wonderful tea. Really high in vitamin C as well, and it tastes fantastic, and I like making hibiscus flower jams and jellies. But a little bit of that in your soap will have this beautiful red colouring and also the added benefit of vitamin C. So a couple of things with your botanicals. If you're going to take them out of your garden, you need to make sure that they're really, really thoroughly dry. The tiniest little bit of moisture in them will cause them all to go mouldy inside your soap. Most botanicals will go brown inside your soap after a long period of time as well. Some of these ones we have come from organic Australian growers, and you can purchase them from Renaissance, and they stay pretty true to colour for the most part. And what I like with the rose petals is they're a nice deep pink, because often when you dry them out yourself they'll just go all yellow or brown. One of my students, and I haven't tested this out, told me that if you dry them in a food dehydrator rather than an oven, they'll keep their nice pink colour. I haven't had a chance, but you could try it out and let me know how you get on. So these are your botanicals. We'll just move them slightly out of the way, that you can use in your soap making. Now, a couple of things if you are using botanicals, particularly if you wanted to use things like oats, they think about what it's going to do when it gets wet. For example, oats turns into porridge. So if you've got that in your soap, it's going to clog up your drains and it's going to be a bit yucky. Now, being a little bit personal, if you're giving, say for example you make an oat soap and you give it to somebody that's particularly hairy, the oats are going to get stuck in their hair all over their body and turn them into porridge. So this is just something to be aware of, what you're putting in and how that's going to react with water in the shower, because we don't want to have people all sticky all over their hairy arms, and we also don't want our drains all clogged up with muck. So in the case of botanicals, most of the time less is more. Just use a little bit, and sometimes some of the bigger leaf botanicals can be a bit easier to work with. So the next additive that we're going to work with is our milk bath powder. Now I have goat's milk, plain milk bath powder and goat's milk powder. You can use either, and so at the moment goat's milk soap is really popular. Let's just go with the plain milk bath powder for today, just to have a play with that. Now you can mix it in dry. The milk bath powder It's basically just powdered milk with all the fat removed out of it. And because it's got no fat, if you have a look in the jar, you can see that it's got really big hard lumps, whereas your normal commercial full cream milk powder will be nice and smooth. It doesn't really matter, it's just the fat that seems to keep it nice and smooth. So with this, you just mix it up with a fork and turn it back into powder again. So you can just take your normal milk bath powder and you can mix it into your melted soap and stir it through if you want to. Or let's go a step further today. Let's take a cup and actually we might melt the soap while we're doing this. So I decided I'm just going for the milk bath powder and also for the coconut or shea butter, I'm just going to use a plain mould. I'd like it to be fairly simple, and this one's really lovely, the oval mould, really glossy and shiny, so we'll use that one. So I want to take enough of this to make a bar size of it. Well, I won't make too thick. You can make it much bigger if you want to, but let's just chop one of those in half, just to give us enough to get the idea of a bar. Let's pop that in the microwave. High for 25 seconds. We'll see how that goes. Now, whilst that's melting, we'll take a little bit of the milk bath powder. Not the lumpy bits, just the plain powder. And it could be the goat's milk, wouldn't make any difference either. And I've just got a little bit of water. So let me move a couple of things so I can show you a little bit better. Not that you can see in the cup, but it's just mixing a little bit of water with the milk bath, so it basically turns into quite a thick milk. That one's a little bit runny, won't matter. Okay, nearly done. We'll give that another 10 seconds. And it just smells like milk at this stage. And we want to decide what sort of fragrance you would like to have with that one. I think for me it could just be a creamer. You don't have to fragrance it if you don't want to, but I'm going to use a tuberose fragrant oil just to give it a little bit of a fragrance. I won't mix it in the cup because I do use these for cooking, and any fragrance that you put in is going to stay in there, whereas the silicone cups I only use for soap making, and so I don't mind the fragrance going in those. Now here's this bit of green. We'll just peel that off the bench and throw it in our use later pile. So I've melted the soap, add a few drops of the tuberose oil, and I can use the milk stirry stick. Now this is cold and I'm putting it into warm milk, so it may cause it to set. You could use, that was actually hot when I got it, but because we've sat here for a few minutes it's gone cold, so it's easier with hot milk. Just mix that through, mix the milk mixture through your milk bath powder in the water. Lovely and smooth and creamy. I can't really show you because it's so liquid, but I'll give an idea. Now, what happens when you use your milk bath powder and your goat's milk powder is they have a milky smell, and sometimes it's not the best. So you want to especially smell this soap, and yeah, that's not the best. So I want to add more tuberose to get over that milk. Particularly your goat's milk can have a really, really strong fragrance, and that might be what you're after. You might be after a milky smell, but I'm kind of after a floral smell with this one today. So a bit more tuberose oil, and yeah, that's quite nice. Okay, so this is, we call it our Cleopatra milk bath, and I'm just going to pour that into this mould. Okay, I'll give a little spritz with the alcohol because it's got a couple of wee bubbles, and we'll just let that set, and I'll unmould it a little later and show you what it looks like. So these are our milk powders, goat's milk, and our milk bath powder. Now we'll have a look at some of the butters. So in this container I have coconut butter, and in this one I have shea butter. They just melt down pretty easily, although they do take a lot longer in a microwave than your melt and pour soap, whereas I might melt your soap for about 30 seconds. With your coconut oil or your shea butter, it might need to go in for a minute and a half. So it's considerably longer. So to save time, I've already melted a little bit. So this one here is the coconut oil, and it's nice and creamy. If you take it in between your fingers and rub it, I don't know if you can see, it just melts with the body temperature warmth. Can you see how that's just melted on my fingers? And it's a really nice emollient, so it'll be really nourishing and soothing to the skin, particularly if you've got really dry skin. So I've just taken a very small amount of the coconut. The shea butter works exactly the same way. I've put it in this little dish and I've melted it. I might pop that in the oven just to warm it up a little bit when we go for the next one. So I'm going to take a little bit of the white soap base that I've chopped up, and for this one I thought because it's a coconut oil I might use the pina colada fragrance oil, which is a blend of coconut and pineapple. It does have quite a yellow tinge to it, the pina colada, so your soap will come out a little bit creamy. It won't be perfectly white, but that's fine. And you could just have it as a plain white soap. You don't have to fragrance it if you don't want to, but I was thinking to make it even a little bit more interesting, I haven't tried this before, so we'll see how it comes out. I'm going to take a little bit of the lime green mineral shimmer powder and tip it in there, and I'm going to mix that all through and see how that comes out. So let's pop that in the microwave for 20-30 seconds, and I'll pop the coconut butter in there as well, just to warm it up a little bit. So the coconut oil was melted before we put it in there, but I just wanted to warm it up a little bit. And now oh, that smells great, the pina colada. So I've got the white soap base mixed here with a little bit of the lime green shimmer. You won't see much of it, but I'll just give a little opalescent effect, which I think is quite nice. A little bit of a lime green, bit of interest in your soap. And we're just going to take, now it's not much, a little bit of the coconut oil, and pour that into the soap, mix it all through. Now you do need to mix this really, really well, because if you don't mix your oils through, you'll get pockets of oil in your finished soap, and it'll get funny little holes and marks and pock marks and lumps in it. So it's quite a vigorous blending to get the oils mixed through your soap. Nearly there. Okay, what you have a look for is what you can't see it from where you are, but what I'm looking for is just to see that there's no little pockets of oil, because they will appear in my finished soap, and it looks pretty good. Now remember, I didn't add any colours into this, so the only colour that we've got in it is of our mineral shimmer powder in the lime green. You might be able to have a look as I pour it, the colour that it's coming out. Quite a nice light pale green. I'll give that a spritz, and that can set also. So let's recap. We've got our clear soap base with our poppy seed and our lavender. We've made a milk bath or Cleopatra milk bath soap, and we've just done a coconut oil soap. Now what's left is our clays that we can use. So we'll move the shea butter and the coconut oil just a little bit out of the way there. We don't need the shimmers any longer, so I'll move those out of the way. And we're going to have a look at the clays. Now you have 3 types of clays with the Renaissance range. We have the green clay, the white clay, and pink clay. Now, why you would use the different ones? The pink clay is really, really good for skin that needs a little bit more nourishment to it. It hydrates the skin, so if your skin is a little bit dehydrated, it's a good one to have. The white clay, the addition of the white clay into your soap makes it froth a little bit more. So if your clients or your friends or yourself like your soap a little frothier, your white clay will do that. It's also really beautiful face mask. If you mix it up with some water, put it on it, let it dry and take it off. And the green clay is more for oily skin. So if you're wanting to make a slightly drier soap, you can use that. Today we're going to use the pink clay. Like your milk bath powder, you've got 2 ways of using it. One is to mix it and stir it through with the water and then tip it into your soap. Let's grab another little container, and I think we'll use the white soap again for this one. Let's just chop another piece of the white soap off. Okay, pop that in the microwave for 25 seconds on high. I think because we did the last ones with the milk bath mixture with the water, we might have a go not mixing this with the water, but just to mix it directly into the soap. And the mould that I'm going to use for this is a flower cavity mould. It's a little dome shaped mould, just a small one, like a guest soap size, but it's quite a nice little soap, and we'll pour it directly in there. Now, using the pink clay is going to colour up our soap, so you may not need to add any other colourants into that as well. Let's see if that's mixed through. Yep, that's pretty good. It is going to be more difficult without mixing it with water to get your colourings nice and smooth. So let's try about this much pink clay in here, and a fragrance. How about some lotus essential oil? That'll be quite nice. So a little bit of lotus oil with our pink clay. Really, really nourishing soap for the skin with the pink clay in it. Okay, let's move that mould so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I'll let you come in a little closer, and I'll try and tip it a little bit so that you can see as I'm mixing it up. A little bit of spillage. It's going to take a lot more effort to mix this through than it would if I had have mixed it in with the water. You can see it's going quite a dark pink. Scrape it down around the sides and keep mixing. By mixing it this way, I am going to get tiny little pockets of pink throughout the soap. I don't mind that effect, and they do tend to settle to the bottom, so it'll be more in your finish. But see now how you've got like those little pink speckles already? That's kind of what you're going to get. If you whisk it, let's give it a bit more, much harder and much faster, and crush them against the side, those will disappear and you'll get a much smoother, more uniform soap. But I quite like the pink specks, so for today I'm going to leave them in there. Let's have a smell, see if it's strong enough. Yep, that smells nice. And now we'll just pour it gently into the rose ball soap. Right up to the top. And spritz to get rid of the bubbles. Okay. Now our additive soaps are setting. We'll leave them for a few minutes and we'll come back and unmold them shortly. But before we do, we'll just have a chat about a few other options that you could have added in, and just a recap of what we've done. So you've got your botanicals, nicely dried. Milk powders, goat's milk or cow milk powder, or any other type of milk powder that you'd like. By the addition of any food substances, it will shorten the shelf life of your soap. So it's just something to be a little bit aware of as well. Clays for skin softening properties, and your butters, again for skin softening and nourishing properties. The other thing that you could add in, your poppy seed will act as an exfoliant. You could use loofahs. You get the round loofahs and slice them as an exfoliant. And you might have noticed I've got here a dish of rock salt. The addition of rock salt into your melt and pour soap will give an exfoliant effect. You might think it's all going to be all harsh and scratchy because the soap is a little bit scratchy, but it won't. As you start to use it in the shower, it will smooth off. It will make it's a lot cheaper to buy rock salt than it is to buy melt and pour soap making. At the moment we sell it for a few dollars a kilo. And so it's a lot cheaper. It will make your soaps cheaper therefore, but also it gives a nice exfoliant property. So you don't want to use too much of it, but just a little bit, 1/4 of a teaspoon mixed through a soap bar will give another exfoliant property. So this is how you add additives into your melt and pour soap. We'll come back in a few minutes and unmold them. So now we're going to unmold the soaps that we made using the additives. So let's begin with these oval ones first. And the silicone molds are just so easy to pop out. And one of the things that I really love about them is this magnificent shine that you'll get off your silicone molds. They're really glossy, really shiny, super easy to take the soaps out of, and they'll come out perfectly every single time. So here is that was our milk bath soap that we made in the first place. This one was the coconut oil with, oh, it's a bit slippery because it's got so much emollient oil in it. Coconut oil with the lime shimmer powders. Oh, they smell fantastic. They're really beautiful. Now, let's try to pop the pink clay. You can see all of the pink dots on the surface where the pink clay has come up to the top. Just release your mould, stretch it a little bit. Give it a bit of a pop. Now, this is quite a deep mould, so it's a little bit harder to get out than some of the other ones, but still quite easy because it's silicone. One of my favourites. It just is such a pretty soap. So here you've got a beautiful little rose ball soap. That was the one that we made with the pink clay. And the last additive soap that we made was the leaf, which we used the poppy seed to sink to the bottom and the lavender to stay at the top. Just gently pop it out, and it looks great. So if you have a close-up of this one, you might see that on the bottom, that was the bottom. So here all of the poppy seeds have sunk, which means they've come to the top of your soap, and on the back of it you've got your layer of lavender which floated. So when you look through the side of your soap, you can see the two distinct layers, and overall they've created a really beautiful effect. So don't be limited by my suggestions in the additives. Have a play, see what you can do, come up with some great ideas. Let me know if you come up with something terrific, and have lots of fun making your soaps with additives.